I'd like to talk about the undercover police in the movement, or the anarchist movement, or the ecological movement, and so on. There's been a book written about it that's just come out called Undercover by Rob Evans and Paul Lewis. Very interesting book, well written. It took me a day to get through it. And also the program that was on the television, which seems to be kind of linked in with the book as well. It's a big sale from The Guardian, almost like a promotion thing. But the fact it's a promotion thing and it's published by The Guardian doesn't negate the contents of it. However, I think the book's quite interesting, not in what it says, but in what it does not say, because I've heard quite a few things, as you do, about these undercover police officers. Some of it's not mentioned in the book, but I'll get onto that later on. Obviously, the most serious thing, if you like, it's all serious as far as I'm concerned, because people's lives have been wrecked as a result of it, people that are quite harmless and innocent, has been the Lawrence case. And now it's emerged that the police were in fact spying upon the Lawrences. Not only the Lawrences, but their people that went around to visit them, people that were assisting them, the groups that were supporting them, were all being spied upon by the police. Now, the Lawrence case is quite well documented. In fact, it was actually taken up by the Daily Blackshirt, otherwise known as the Daily Mail, in a departure from their usual racist drivel. As well as because the Lawrences were an ordinary family. They were very conservative, very straight people that wanted their children to get on. They'd come over to England to work and to make a living for themselves, as they were entitled to do. They were not involved in any political agitation. They had no criminal records. They were, as I say, very, very straight and very conservative. So when their son was murdered by a racist gang, it kind of shook the conscience of the nation, and a lot of people supported them, including, as I say, the Daily Mail. There was a lot of failings in police procedure and so on, and in fact it was rumoured or hinted at that some of the police investigating it, or some of the local police, actually had contacts with criminals, and the gang that attacked Stephen Lawrence were in fact, a lot of them, their relations were criminals, and that the police had dealings with them and so on. But this surely can't be the reason why the police were spying upon the Lawrences. The really disturbing thing about it is, why were they spying on the Lawrences? What were they hoping to gain by digging up dirt, which they so spectacularly failed to do? And why now have we only just found out about it? It's because one of the police has gone rogue, if you like, and has spilled the beans. He's mentioned in this book, and he was mentioned in the Horizon thing as well. There's no point in going over the same territory there and describing what he said and so on. The question I want to ask is why? Why were the Lawrences being spied on? And also, where did the orders come from to spy on the Lawrences like this? It was a long and sustained campaign. So where did these orders come from? From how high up in the hierarchy did they come from? These are questions that have got to be answered. Not really, I think it will make any difference, because the police so far have got away with murder many times over. And not only murder, but you have a look at such notorious cases as the Hillsborough disaster, the miners' strike, particularly outside Saltley, and the Birmingham bombers, who turned out not to be bombers at all, but completely innocent. Very strange sort of relationship between the police and the press there, because after the Birmingham bombers were allowed to finally see the light of day and be pronounced innocent, some sections of the press still campaigned against them. There's no smoke without fire sort of innuendos and everything. Obviously this comes from certain sections of the police hierarchy. But why were they doing it? What was the point of it? None of this seems to have any point. The miners' strike and so on. Again, Hillsborough. Again, cover-ups, lies, dissimulation, but again, no heads have rolled, nothing at all. So I actually, out of this whole thing about the Lawrences and all these other things as well, this spying on activists, I don't actually think that anything's going to come of it. I think that the great British public, although initially outraged by it, particularly Lawrence thing, will just accept it as they seem to accept everything else. Well, if we're going to accept it, let's not forget it, because many lives have been wrecked. Now, in the book and in the television programme, we particularly concentrated upon this Bob Lambert guy. And in the book itself, it actually says, more or less accuses, and remember, these books, they go through rooms, every word's checked by lawyers and so on. So, as I said, that's why the most interesting stuff is not in the book. But the stuff that's in the book is quite interesting anyway, because they basically accuse this Bob Lambert, who actually sired a son with one of the activists, of actually participating in a bombing of Debenham stores as part of an animal liberation thing. Now, other people were prosecuted and jailed for it, but Mr. Lambert seems to have got away with it somehow. And also as well, to say how sick all this is, the guy was even visiting the people that he'd set up in jail, them still unaware that he was in fact a police officer. Now, he was a police officer. It wasn't like the usual grunt that patrols the streets and beats you up in the van. These were a specialised unit, the Special Demonstration Squad, that had their roots in the late 60s and the anti-Vietnamese protests and so on. These people seem to have infiltrated not only the anarchist and environmental movement, all branches of it, but they seem to have also have infiltrated the right wing as well. So therefore, the BNP, the EDL would have had their police spies within. In the past, the police usually relied upon informers. That is to say, people that were already in the movement, but they might have arrested them for something or other and been able to put a bit of pressure on them so that they could spy within their own ranks and report to the police and get a financial reward for it, and so on and so on, get caught up in it. This is quite well known in Ireland, for example, and it led to many people being killed and assassinated and various other things. The whole murky story of Northern Ireland hasn't really been told, but it probably will do, and now it's all too late. Some of the books by Martin Dillon are quite interesting. I'd recommend reading, particularly The Dirty War and so on. Which shows about how the British operated in Northern Ireland, how the so-called security services operated. But at least you could argue, if you support the system, that the Irish Republican Army and the Loyalists and so on were actually killing loads of people and murdering them and blowing things up and causing a lot of damage. There was a mini war going on there. So I suppose you could say, if you were into the system, then in some ways it was justified. But what is not justified is this infiltration into groups that are basically full of harmless people whose lives have been ruined. Well, this Lambert guy, for example, he actually, as I say, sired a child. And a lot of them seems to have had long-term affairs with people that were activists, some of them that I know personally. And their lives have been completely ruined because they've been going out with people for years, have built up what they thought was a loving relationship, complete with photographs, complete with going to meet their parents, introducing them to their friends, and so on and so forth. The reason they appear to have done this is if you're shacked up with someone that's respected and quite well known, then you're not going to be asked too many questions, are you? Oh, well, she's going out with him, she's, 100%, so he must be all right. But no, a lot of these people were not all right. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because I've met one of these guys before that was infiltrated into a group. Plus, I think there was a woman as well. I've got no proof about the woman, but the guy is named in the book. There's a picture of him in a gas mask. You would never have guessed he was a cop. Somebody I know did suspect him, but everybody seemed to know him. He was a really affable, really likeable guy, like with a sense of humour and so on. You would never ever suspect him of being a cop. Ever. Now the thing is, I don't know why the cops were infiltrated into the group I was in, Movement Against the Monarchy. We weren't exactly plotting to blow up the royal family or anything like that, or do any particular harm to the royal family. True, our rhetoric of guillotines and so on was there for effect, but we did not represent a serious threat to the state and that we were going to kill anybody or even get massive mobs out on the streets rioting. If only we could have done the latter, I would have been very pleased about it. But we didn't. Well, we had these fucking cops on our tail all the time, and we didn't know that they were cops. They slept in our houses, you know, they shared our food, you know, they went on things, you know, some of us, they were even like mates to some of us, you know. A total and absolutely disgraceful way of carrying on. But they didn't do us any harm. The cop that was tasked to us, and presumably others, at least he didn't, as far as we know, enter into relationships with women at all. And in fact, I think he had a phony girlfriend that he produced once every now and again. Although I must admit, I never met her. What else can I say about these cops? Oh yeah, there was the other thing as well, wasn't there? The other big case of the McDonald's, where Helen Steele, one of the main McDonald's people, had a love affair, or that's how she described it, with somebody for years as one of these undercover cops. A lot of these cops have been rumbled, but only by accident. For example, a lot of them, their operation seems to be that they dig deep into the movement by having affairs with people, even having kids and so on, that they really convince these women, and it is mostly women, that this is the big passionate affair that they want and what everybody usually wants, that this is the guy and so on that they're going to live with for the rest of their lives, that they're going to have kids with, that they're going to commit themselves to. And then suddenly these people all disappear. So that's what happens. They all mysteriously disappear. And it's only thanks to Helen Steele, and her story is told quite eloquently on the TV programme and in the book. She actually spent years tracking the guy down, only to find out that the guy did not exist. And none of these people actually existed, at least in the name that they had, because they were stealing morbidly the identity of dead children, which is really fucking sick and weird. Although, of course, you know, what of it being the secret state and so on, it's not surprising. But think of the amount of upset that it caused for the parents of these dead children. It's as though none of us have got any feelings or anything like that, that we're completely irrelevant in that direction. So yeah, I mean, I cannot imagine what it must have been like for these women to have undergone something like the biggest betrayal. You'd never trust anybody again, really, would you? It would be a complete destruction of your sort of self-consciousness, your whole self, completely destroyed. Well, fortunately, I don't think that these people were destroyed, and I do believe that they're taking out a class action against the police. And I hope that they sue them and that they screw the state for every penny that they can get out of them, that they're awarded exemplary damages. Helen Steele actually said that she felt like she'd been raped by the state. And that's what it was. It was that. But it wasn't only the physical thing, it was the mental thing as well. A cruel and horrible thing to do to somebody, particularly since people like Helen Steele and the people in the ecological movement, they're harmless people. They're not going to be blowing things up. They're not going to be like taking a gun out. They're not a threat to the state. They're not a physical threat to anybody. Yeah, they might do a bit of direct action now and again and draw the wheels of industry to a close if they have a protest for a few days or something. But that's not like blowing people up. It's not like assassinations. It's not like what the IRA did and so on and so forth. It's nothing like that at all, and they know it. This specialist squad, they seem to, because usually when somebody, oh, it's just a rogue copper, it's just, you know, a bad apple. But this whole squad seems to be out of control, and the people that are giving them orders are out of control. This is not the ordinary police, although they, of course, they all started off as ordinary police. These are specialist units, highly trained, highly motivated, and highly paid as well. And, you know, they've got carte blanche to do basically what they're like. And all this stuff about, oh, well, they were told not to have relationships with the activists and so on. Well, that's just a pack of lies. Because on one hand, they're told not to have relationships with them, and on the other hand, they're told, always be sure to use contraception. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So, you know, they want to have their cake and eat it. But as I say, it must be like a terrible feeling, a betrayal. It's, you know, yeah, like being raped by the state, but also having your head screwed by the state. And I'll tell you where it has been successful. Not that it's prevented any terrorist outrage or anything like that, but it's really got people wondering who their friends are, who you can trust, and so on. That's the real damage that it's done. And that's the real sickness of it. Now, I can tell you this, that with the Hillsborough thing, with the killing of Tomlinson outside the Bank of England, with the killings in police custody, miners' strike, all these cover-ups, lies and deceptions, not a single police officer has gone to jail. And I can guarantee you that not a single police officer will go to jail as a result of these so-called investigations that are coming out. Who's going to investigate it anyway? A public inquiry is just kicking it into the long grass. An inquiry conducted by the police. Now, I had one of the policemen that's going to do the inquiry on the programme. And I must tell you, he didn't exactly inspire confidence. A slippery, slimy character who could exonerate just about everything. You could see that straight away. Oh, I have a judge-led inquiry. Well, so what? You know, judges, they're part of the system, aren't they? The police, the system, the whole system, the state cannot pass judgment upon itself. The most they can do is say, oh, it was a rogue individual, or maybe even a rogue unit. But the rogue unit's not good enough, because millions of pounds were pumped into this unit, particularly by Jack Straw, who is supposed to be like, you know, the Labour Party. That's the other thing as well. This is why this is really state. Because this went on merrily under both Conservative and Labour governments, it makes absolutely no difference who's in power. You've got the same cops up to the same tricks. And as I say, none of them are going to be purged, none of them are going to be punished for it. In fact, they're all sitting back now, laughing their heads off, thinking what mugs we all are. And yes, we were mugs, but how else could it be? These people were very, very convincing. I mean, they must have had some kind of training, a bit like method acting, really getting into your role. The worst creep of them all, Kennedy, because he was the most prolific. Again, it doesn't really go too much into his activities in the book, but you can see that he had several affairs with women who thought they'd found the love of their life. Plus, of course, he was screwing around on the side as well. All this paid for by me and you, the taxpayer. It just seems to be almost doing it for the sake of doing it. Again, most of these people are completely harmless. But he was also working in conjunction with foreign police forces all over Europe and in America and so on. This is a big thing, you know. You just can't go and work in Europe and work with without permission of the FBI. It's all high up stuff. I don't want to see the ordinary coppers sort of blamed for this. They're bastards enough anyway. This is a sort of super bastards. So I say, what kind of people are they? I would actually say the people that did this sort of thing are sociopaths. You have to be a sociopath to declare your love for somebody and be going out with them for years, to have kids with them, and then just disappear and forever out of their lives. So how were they discovered? Well, mostly by accident. It was when they disappeared, when they went out of people's lives and people were looking for them, that the suspicions began to be aroused. One of them has gone rogue, that Pete Black guy, or whatever his name is. He's come out, he's on the programme, he's said about the spying on the Lawrences, he has revealed a lot. Now maybe he might be part of a damage limitation thing, maybe he's gone genuine, maybe he's like, decided, I've had enough of it, I'm going to spill the beans, I'm going to be a whistleblower. And if he has, good. Not that I trust him, but it'd be quite interesting to see like how the state attempt to malign him, to say that he's like suffering from a mental illness or something, that he's like undergone trauma, or whether they harass him and so on. That would be quite interesting. So, how do you spot one? Well, you can't. As I said, as sociopaths, not only do they can even cry as well. So they must have had some training about how to cry and how to turn the tears on and how to be convincing. They were convincing to the extent that some of them had tattoos and stuff like that. Piercings and tattoos, you know, so you'd never suspect him of being a copper. You know, the guy with sort of ACAB printed across his forehead, you'd never suspect him of being a copper, would you? But it's turning out that this is what it's like. So yeah, these people are definitely sociopaths, and it's all acting. And any rumour about them sort of going native, that's just a lot of old cobblers. In no way do they go native. If they were to go native, they would have confessed, they would have sussed up when they were doing it, and they would have like come out. It would have been the biggest story of them all. But none of them did. Yeah, some of them might have developed alcohol habits. Some of them might have even developed drug habits and so on. But that's not the same as going completely native. Kennedy was pretending that he'd gone native. He was pretending that he loved the women that he'd betrayed and so on. What a creep. Still acting, still carrying on, and yet they're saying, these were really wonderful people. It just makes me sick. But anyway, as I said, there's been plenty of programs about it, plenty of more books about it and so on. So the main thing is, how do you spot one of them? Well, as I said, you can't. But there are several giveaways here. There seems to be some sort of pattern. Obviously, when they all just disappear, it's a pattern. But they've disappeared, so you want to find them out before then. So I would suggest, and apart from waiting to see what, because a lot of it is also the accidental finding of the contents of their wallets as well. But I think one of the main things is to go into their history. And the way to go into somebody's history is to meet their parents. If for some reason you can't meet their parents, or a lot of them seem to have had sick parents that were suffering from cancer and so on, and they'd have to go and visit them and stay with them and so on and so forth. These people didn't exist. If you meet somebody's parents, well, unless of course the parents are a plant, but then again the parents would probably have somewhere settled to live, wouldn't they? Being older people, they'd have a history and so on. They'd be easy to check up on. This is where I think our comrades made the mistake, that they didn't meet any of the parents and so on. So yeah, check out for the parents, and also listen to people's stories. We're a very open movement. There was a lot of cliquiness in our movement, and there's a lot of class bias in our movement. That's very true. But we are essentially an open movement, and most of the stuff we do is legal, although it may skate near the ice. And even the illegal stuff that we do is, illegal paint bombing and illegal postering and stuff like that. Or maybe how people get caught up in street disturbances. But it's not like we're not playing around with guns and bombs or anything like that. I mean, despite our rhetoric, we've got no intention of doing it. What else can we say about them? Yeah, well, if they haven't got any, you have to meet their parents. A way to avoid this, of course, is to work in very small affinity groups within larger groups. Within a small affinity group, at work, or your place of education, or in your local neighbourhood, it's very, very difficult for someone leading a false life to lead a false life under such circumstances. These people seem to move around a lot. They didn't seem to have any real roots. The only roots that they sunk were in our movement. They didn't have any roots before then. Well, quite obviously, they didn't say, oh, well, I went to police college in Hendon, I graduated with honours, I went into the special demonstration squad and so on. These people have got no roots. They've got no real existence outside of the police force. Although, of course, they do have families. And here's a point that nobody come up with, now I come to think of it. What about all the people that they were married to? And they got kids and they're married and they're carrying on and having affairs with other women and so on. Did this have any effect on their lives once they were rumbled and so on? Did their wives leave them? It would be very interesting to know about that. Very interesting indeed. Also, these people always disappeared. You know, they always disappeared. The reason they disappeared was because they were going back to see their families. Cockeyed excuses that they gave, and also they disappeared to meet with their fellow officers. Well, no, in the safe houses and in pubs and so on, driving nice flash cars, thanks to the generosity of the taxpayer, having a right old laugh and taking a piss out of us, I would imagine. Yeah, if one of them's watching this now and you know who you are, you're probably having a right old laugh, don't you? And we thought that you were all right. Well, fuck you. No, I hope you have nightmares, and I hope something very unpleasant happens to you. Right? If I ever see you in the street, mate, well, I won't be responsible for my actions. But enough of that. And this was one of the nice ones. It's not so much what I feel about it, it's what other people feel about it, and they were really upset and really annoyed. You know, you stayed overnight in their places, and then their places were raided afterwards. Yeah. What a creep you are. All right then. So how do we do? Oh yeah, there's something else as well I found I should mention. Stuff that was not in the book. Stuff obviously that I cannot verify because it was what people told to me. But the Lambert guy, who more or less in the book it said was responsible for firebombing Debenhams and causing hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage, actually it may have been him or it may have been someone else, but they actually offered explosives to somebody I know personally who said, no, thank you. So therefore, yeah, if people start offering you explosives or they start offering you firearms and stuff like that, and start talking about doing illegal stuff that could put you in a lot of trouble, then be very suspicious of them. They probably are police. I used to think that all this stuff about agent provocateurs was basically very exaggerated. There is a lot of paranoia in our movement and so on, but it really is reason to be paranoid now. So another way that we can overcome this is to be a completely open movement and to be on the streets all the time. Small groups, affinity groups, merge into the mass outbreaks that occur on the streets. We can't be shy, we can't hide our politics. The only way that we're going to survive is not by doing sort of our own specialist direct action and so on, although we have to do it. You've always got to keep your hand in, and you might hit gold once every now and again. You might actually spark a resonance somewhere. A lot of the work that we put into doesn't seem to go anywhere, but sometimes we do hit the jackpot. So what I'm saying is, do not give up your activity because of these plainclothes police. Just don't get involved with dodgy people. But again, they're all they're good actors. And I don't think for 1 minute that we're going to be free of these people ever, at all. I don't think for one. They've disbanded a special demonstration. They've just got another name for them. Apparently, there's between 100 and 150 people deeply embedded, not only in the anarchist movement, but also in the left, in the Socialist Workers' Party, in probably every party that there is, in the right, in the English Defence League, in the British National Party. There's probably people deeply embedded in all of them. And in fact, from what we've found out over the last few months, it would be highly surprising if this was not the case. So let's get out on the streets. I'm always saying that. That's our only hope. 22 million people on the streets in Egypt. That's where we lose ourselves, in the mass, when the mass are going. This is what we aim for. This is what we want. And no matter how many fucking plainclothes police or uniform police or spies or infiltrators or provocateurs that we have out on the streets, they'll be just swept aside as an irrelevant minority. There's nothing they can do to prevent any revolution from happening in this country once it starts. But it can only start when a vast numbers of people come out onto the streets, probably spontaneously, as I said before. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about it. Read the book. It will make you really, not only angry, but it'll probably make you feel physically ill. Physically ill at the way that these women were treated and so on. I must confess straight away, when I first heard of the Mark Kennedy thing, I actually thought, well, these people were mugs because they just went for an image and so on. The guy was a human being. He was an image with his dreadlocks, with his tattoos and so on. But reading about these things, seeing it on the television, these are flesh and blood people that were completely fucked over by the state, victims of the state. They are real and truly victims, just the same as all these other people that are victims of the place. And as I said before, my advice to them is sue the bastards for every fucking penny you can get out of them, because that's the only compensation you're going to get. The state is not going to imprison any of them. None of them are going to be sanctioned. Nothing's going to happen. They're going to continue to do the same thing. But these people have been caught, and let's have them, as they say in the police force, bang to rights. So therefore, that's all I've got to say about it. Sue, sue, and sue again.